All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today, we're diving deep into the world of megachurches.
Megachurches.
These massive congregations.
Huge.
You know, the ones that kind of look like rock concerts sometimes?
Yeah, they have the lights, the
The whole
stages.
9 yards.
Yeah.
But we're going beyond the
It's
spectacle.
behind the scenes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're asking what's really going on in these massive religious institutions. What's the draw? What are the potential downsides? And what do we need to know?
I think it's interesting, right? These megachurches, they've kind of exploded in popularity.
Especially here in the U.S.
Yeah, they're like a cultural phenomenon.
So for this deep dive, we're turning to a fascinating podcast episode
Yeah.
called The Rise and Shadows of Megachurches.
From behind the pulpit.
Right. And in it, 5 pastors share their personal experiences.
Their raw, unfiltered experiences.
Yeah, giving us a glimpse into what it's really like to be a part of these huge institutions. So let's start with the initial appeal. I mean, why are these megachurches so popular?
Well, one pastor, Pastor Mike, he described the early days of his megachurch as electric.
Electric.
Thousands of people gathering, a real sense of energy and connection.
So it's that sense of belonging.
Yeah, I think in our modern world, people are craving that.
Makes sense.
But Pastor Mike also talked about a shift, like as the church grew,
Oh.
the focus kind of went from genuine spiritual development to almost like an obsession with attendance numbers.
So the pressure to grow, to keep those numbers climbing.
Exactly. And he felt like it started to overshadow the church's primary mission, nurturing individual faith.
So instead of focusing on the individual spiritual journey, it became more about putting on a big show.
Right, almost like a performance.
To attract a crowd.
Yeah, and the pastor's role kind of shifted too.
From spiritual guide to almost like a CEO.
Yeah, always strategizing for growth.
Wow, that's quite a shift. And speaking of business, one of the pastors, Pastor Sarah, she talked about the financial side of megachurches.
Yeah, her experience left her disillusioned.
What happened?
Well, she noticed that financial contributions, they seem to really influence the church's decisions.
Like big donations from wealthy individuals.
Exactly. And it created kind of an imbalance of power.
Like the biggest shareholders in a company having the most sway.
Right. And she felt like certain initiatives or decisions, they were prioritized not because they aligned with the church's teaching.
Well, because they pleased the big donors.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah, it raises some ethical questions.
It makes you wonder, are there enough safeguards in place to make sure those donations are being used responsibly?
And ethically.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Pastor James's story. He was actually a whistleblower at his megachurch.
Wait, a whistleblower in a church?
Yeah, it's not something you hear every day. He uncovered some pretty shocking financial practices.
What did he find?
Millions of dollars funneled into things like private jets, lavish retreats for church leaders.
While regular members of the congregation were struggling financially?
The contrast was stark.
So he felt he had to speak up.
He felt a moral obligation.
What happened?
Well, the church leadership, they weren't exactly thrilled.
So instead of transparency,
They resented it.
to protect the institution's image,
And that's where it gets dangerous, right? When dissent is stifled.
people are afraid to speak up.
Exactly. Which brings us to Pastor Emily's experience.
She described her time in a megachurch as toxic.
She ended up leaving because it was affecting her mental well-being.
Wow. What led to that?
She talked about authoritarian leadership.
Like no room for questioning or disagreement.
Right. Maintaining that perfect image became more important than addressing any concerns.
So people who might have legitimate issues, they felt silenced.
And she tried to make a difference from within, but the pressure to conform, the dismissal of any criticism,
Just became too much.
it was taking a toll on her mental health.
It's heartbreaking that a place meant for spiritual growth.
Could become a source of trauma.
It makes you think about the potential for harm when these power structures go unchecked.
It raises questions about individual agency and the responsibility of these institutions to protect their members. But there's a glimmer of hope. We have Pastor David's experience.
He chose a different path.
He decided to lead a smaller, community-focused church.
What motivated that decision?
He felt disillusioned by the megachurch model, especially that emphasis on spectacle over genuine connection and service.
So he wanted to go back to basics.
Authenticity, community-based approach.
It's like shifting the focus from outward grandeur
To inward growth.
and real community impact.
It makes you think about the trade-offs with these different models of religious institutions.
It's complex. We've gone from the initial excitement of these megachurches to the potential for unintended consequences,
Ethical dilemmas.
even personal harm.
It's a lot to take in, and we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into the implications of these stories and what you, as a listener, should consider when navigating any religious institution.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. So we're back, and, listening to these stories, it seems like there's this constant tension
Right. I have a real push and pull.
between a church wanting to grow,
Expand its reach.
but also staying true to its core mission.
Maintaining that authenticity.
Like Pastor Mike was saying, there's that point where the numbers,
The constant drive for more people.
it starts to overshadow everything else.
Yeah, you lose sight of the individuals.
Their spiritual well-being.
And it's not just churches, you know?
Oh, right.
This happens everywhere.
Like where?
Businesses, nonprofits.
Even social movements.
It's this challenge, right? How do you grow without losing your soul?
So what do we do? I mean, how do we as individuals figure this out?
Well, I think one thing to watch out for is a lack of transparency.
Like, what do you mean?
If an organization isn't open about its finances, how it makes decisions,
Mhm.
or how it handles complaints, that's a red flag.
Like they're hiding something.
It creates an environment where things can go wrong.
That's what happened with Pastor James.
Exactly. He tried to expose those financial issues.
But they shut him down.
They wanted to protect their image.
More than being accountable.
And another warning sign is a culture of fear, you know?
Oh, like people being afraid to speak up
Yeah, if you can't challenge the status quo,
or disagree.
that's a problem. It allows things to fester.
Like with Pastor Emily.
She felt pressured to just go along with everything.
Even when she had serious doubts
It's like they prioritized that image of unity.
over actually addressing problems.
And that's something to think about in any organization, not just churches.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Ask yourself, do I feel safe to speak my mind here?
That's a good point.
Are there systems in place to hold people accountable?
Do they actually value different opinions?
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement,
The energy of a big group.
but you have to step back and ask, are they walking the walk?
Do their actions match their words?
And how do they treat people who raise concerns?
That's critical thinking, right?
Exactly. Don't just accept things at face value.
You got to dig a little deeper.
Be discerning about where you invest your time and energy.
So how do we find that balance then? Of a community that's both authentic.
And supportive.
That's the question.
Well, it starts with knowing yourself.
What do you mean?
What are your values, your needs? What are you looking for in a spiritual community?
That makes sense.
Don't be afraid to try different things.
Visit different churches.
Ask questions. Get a feel for the vibe.
It's like dating.
Haha, exactly.
You got to find the right fit.
And remember, this is your journey.
It's personal.
There's no right or wrong way to do it.
That's what I loved about Pastor David's story.
He chose that smaller path.
Focused on community.
He wanted that genuine connection, that service.
Over the big show.
It's a reminder that sometimes less is more.
Strip away the distraction.
And focus on those core values.
Love, compassion, service.
That's what really matters.
It's a powerful message.
It makes you think, what's truly important in my own spiritual journey?
What are those non-negotiable?
The things you won't compromise on.
Yeah, and it's not just about being part of an institution.
Right. Spiritual growth can happen anywhere.
Through art, music, nature,
Even just quiet reflection.
or acts of service.
It's about finding what feeds your soul.
What gives you that sense of meaning and purpose?
Absolutely. And staying curious,
Open-minded.
willing to explore different things.
We've covered a lot today.
We have.
And I think we need a moment to let all this sink in.
Yeah, take a breath.
But we'll be back shortly to wrap things up and leave you with a final thought to ponder. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of megachurches,
It's been quite a journey.
it really has, with all these stories.
Like, we're at highs and the lows.
From those pastors who've seen it all from the inside. What do you think are the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
You know, one thing that really stands out is discernment.
Discernment, right?
Being able to look beyond the surface,
Because it's easy to get caught up in the glitz and glam.
the charisma, the big crowds,
But we have to remember,
to ask those tough questions.
like, are their actions matching their words?
Are they being transparent?
Open about their finances, how they operate?
Do they welcome different opinions?
Or are they all about keeping up appearances?
Those are things to consider, not just in churches.
But in any organization.
Absolutely, whether it's a company, a nonprofit, even a social movement.
Yeah, it's about being an informed participant.
And when it comes to faith,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that your spiritual journey
It's personal.
There's no one right way.
You don't have to conform to anyone else's expectations.
Like Pastor David, he found his own path,
Leading a smaller church
focused on community.
instead of chasing after those massive crowds.
It's a reminder that spiritual growth can happen anywhere.
It doesn't have to be tied to a big institution,
You can find it in nature,
Yeah.
in art.
even in those quiet moments of reflection.
It's about nurturing your soul
Finding what gives you meaning and purpose.
and staying curious.
Open to new experiences.
Yeah, always exploring, always growing.
So as we end this deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a question to think about.
What are your non-negotiables when it comes to spiritual community?
What are the things you absolutely will not compromise on?
Because choosing where to invest your time, your energy,
Your faith.
it's a big decision.
And it's worth careful consideration.
So thank you for joining us on this journey.
We hope this has sparked some thoughtful reflection
Encouraged you to be discerning.
and to find what truly resonates with your own spiritual path.
Keep seeking, keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.
Until next time.